Okay, Mayor Condrey, I think we are ready to get started.
Okay, I will call this meeting to order. My temporary gavel. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 21 April Middletown City Council meeting. This is being conducted via Zoom video conferencing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the recently signed Ohio House Bill 197, temporarily amending the public meetings law. The meeting agenda will be conducted as normal today, and we'll be streaming it live, which you can see on the Facebook, the City of Middletown's page, and it's going to be posted to YouTube later as well. There are also possibly some people zoomed in for the public hearings, so we look forward to hearing from you all. Let's start with a moment of meditation, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
to the republic, which is
stands one nation,
Under
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I look forward to that being in sync when we're in person at some point. All right, Ms. Gink, will you please call the roll for us tonight?
Ms. Vittori.
Here.
Ms. Nenny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Mulligan.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. Okay, so we have one, let's start with one of two public hearings this evening. The first one is our 2020 annual action plan regarding HUD funding. I'll go ahead and read this. The City of Middletown is directed by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, is submitting its program year 2019. Is this 2019 action plan?
It's
Or
a
is that a
2020 action plan.
Okay, just making sure. So that is a typo, just if anyone's following through. 2020 annual action plan, setting the program activities and budget for the Community Development Block Grant or CDBG program.
I believe the first person that had some comments was Ms. Mueller, who's been worked with community development partners in helping to organize our response.
Good evening to you all. This is Mindy Mueller. There has been no comments received since the last public hearing that we held. The budget that was presented is continuing to be the one that we plan to put forth to HUD. There are specific activities that are outlined that meet with the community's priorities and aligned with HUD's priorities for the consolidated plan and the annual action plan that's slated to begin May 1. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, there has been a delay in the way that all of those are being put forth and received at HUD. And so once this public hearing has ended and council approves the action plan, then we will go ahead and work on submitting that to HUD. So if there's anyone on the call that's interested in giving any comments from the public, I think we can open the floor for that.
Do we have anyone on the call that wishes to speak in favor of the HUD action plan proposed? If you're on the call and you'd like to comment, please use the hands up option on your Zoom.
Before we do that, can we have the mayor officially open the public hearing?
I believe she did prior to Ms. Mueller.
Okay. Okay.
I see no comments, Madam Mayor.
Looks like they're muted, Susan.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we don't have anyone to speak in favor of it. Then do we have anyone speaking in opposition?
I see no comments appearing on that one either, Madam.
Okay, do we have any council comments to be had one way or another? I have one, hopefully it's a quick question. Just the planning and administration costs. Is there any sort of a breakdown as to what types of things that includes?
Do you want me to speak to that, Susan, or did you want to
Sure.
take that?
Sure.
So HUD caps the CDBG admin at 20%. And so those fees are those that are in the contract between the city and CDP. That's largely what encompasses those fees. So it's in our contract with the city at CDP. We also include some other incidentals like legal ads that have to be put in order to meet HUD guidelines. If there are other smaller fees throughout the year, it's not a one-to-one. We do leave a little bit of wiggle room in to make sure that those incidentals that we're required to do are covered. But the vast largest percentage of that is the contract that CDP has with the city to administer CDBG and home dollars.
Okay, and if those administrative funds are not all used up, does it go back to anything else, or is that just a set amount?
That's a set contractual amount.
Okay.
And Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have administered this in-house previously, and we found it most cost-effective to work with this group to administer the program.
We've previously had up to 2 staff members working on this. It's bounced between 1 and 2. We tried this last year, and it has proven much more cost-effective and has increased our compliance with the HUD rules, and they've been really pleased with CDP's involvement.
Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, any other comments? We had no citizen comments in favor or against. Then I guess we'll close the public hearing on that, right? We don't have anything else, Susan?
Nothing additional, thank you.
Okay. All right, then that would bring us to the next public hearing. So we'd like to open that up. This is a map amendment case number 1-20, a request by petitioner Dustin Hurley with Hurley Gunshire Limited on behalf of the property owner, Briel Butler LLC, for a map amendment to rezone the property located northeast of the intersection of Lefferson Road and Spring Grove Lane, Middletown, Ohio, 45044. This is parcel ID number Q 6542063000007 from the B1 Neighborhood Business Zoning District to I1 Industrial Park Zoning District. The property is a total of 5.5980 acres. Planning Commission's recommendation has been forwarded to City Council for final review and decision. Do we have any citizen comments, or do we have someone who's speaking? I guess, Dustin, would you like to speak to this first? He's on here, right?
Mayor Condrey, if I could start with the staff member that was involved in this.
Absolutely.
Austin Idemiller is our zoning inspector who's on the call. Austin, do you have anything you'd like to add that wasn't included in your material?
No, if we could go to the next slide, please, the zoning map. Okay, so the property in question is located right there in the middle. It is the B1 zoning district. To the west, we have the I1. To the north is the R4, and to the south is I2. So the proposed I1 zoning district is congruent with the surrounding properties.
And Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval of this, correct?
That is correct.
You have anything else you'd like to add?
If we could go a couple more slides forward, there should be about the master plan. One more forward, please. One more. Okay, so in our newer master plan that we're looking at adopting this year, the proposed master plan indicates that this parcel will be located in an industrial buffer. The industrial buffer represents residential neighborhoods that are located directly adjacent to industrial land uses. It is the intent that these neighborhoods will transition to non-residential uses over time. So this proposed map amendment would be consistent with our newer master plan. And that's really all I got for you.
Ms. Combs, anything you'd like to add?
Nope, that's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then I believe Mr. Hurley has his hand up. If you'd like to start, Mr. Hurley.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add. I think that the written materials that have been submitted are pretty sufficient. I just want to make it clear that Planning Commission did unanimously approve this. I think there was one person that attended the Planning Commission meeting that had, I wouldn't really say they really even opposed it. They had some questions related to how the future development might work, the paving, some water runoff questions. And once he was informed that the city would still be involved in the permitting process, should there be any development of this lot in the future, and that the city, of course, would continue to oversee those types of issues, I think that his concerns were satisfied. Obviously, Planning Commission's concerns were satisfied because they gave us a unanimous recommendation. City staff is recommending it. So I do think it's appropriate for council to move this along for readings. There is a representative here that's on the Zoom call if there are any specific questions related to the use of the property or sort of what their intent is going forward. So he's here as well if there are questions for him.
Are there any other parties that would like to speak in favor of the map amendment? I see no additional comments.
I'd like to make a positive comment in that I thought that this staff report was very well put together. So it answered all my questions and really did a very good job of explaining everything. So I appreciate that.
Good, I'm glad. Is there anyone would like to speak in opposed to the map amendment? I am seeing no comments on that either.
Okay. Any other council comments either way?
This is Joe Mulligan. I do have one question for Ms. Combs. Ashley?
I've unmuted her. There. Oh, wait. Still trying to get a handle on the technology. I think she should be able to go now.
Yep.
Okay. Question for her. I mean, obviously this has Planning Commission recommendation and conforms with the master plan, and the amendment comports with the adjoining land uses. But from a global perspective, do we ever want to look in the near future to some limitation on these storage facilities within the city of Middletown? I know there's a significant number, and I wonder if other communities have adopted certain limitations just on this particular, storage facilities in general.
I mean, that's something that staff can look into. I mean, the reason that planning staff looked at this and thought that, we would recommend approval is that if you go back to the zoning map, this property in question is located within a 500-foot buffer, which gives protection from the existing housing and AK Steel. But again, like you said, that's something that staff would be happy to look to in the future. We're doing that with a couple of other uses right now as well, of limiting them if we can. Maybe to just storage units only being allowed in industrial. We know that they're allowed in, and obviously commercial, so that's something we can definitely look at for you.
Okay, yeah, if council's in agreement, I'd like to see that information.
Good thinking, Joe. I like that.
Yeah, I would stand in agreement of that.
We will do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with no other comments then, we'll close the public hearing on the map amendment case number 1-20.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to citizen comments. Ms. Gank, I believe you said we did not receive any.
I did not, no.
Okay, that brings us to council comments. And I'm going to look at the first person on my Zoom to start with. Mr. Mulligan, would you like to start with council comments today?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick note. I did receive some emails and texts regarding the boil advisory that happened on Saturday and Sunday, and just want to just express my gratitude to staff to getting that fixed as soon as possible. It did expose maybe some shortfalls in our communication to residents. We were fortunate in this incident, that there was no contamination and no one was in danger for unsafe water, but it did reveal some things that we need to improve internally. And I look forward to Ms. Cohen's report on that. I know she's going to have some information for us on the timeline of events and the actions that were taken. But I just appreciate staff's input on that and responding more quickly and maybe more broadly in the future as boil advisories come up. Hopefully they're very rare, but we'll be better prepared on the next occasion. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Moon, would you like to go next?
Sure. Very briefly, I agree with Mr. Mulligan in his comments regarding the boil advisory. We certainly have some work to do there. As far as the other item I wanted to mention, in this unusual world we're living in, I would remind everybody that they have until the 28th of this month to vote absentee. We still have an election going on, and all the candidates on the ballot have put in lots of hard work. And please remember your civic duty to get out and vote this year, or this spring rather. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Nenny.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Again, I just wanted to address the boil advisory. I did live in the neighborhood that was affected and received what I thought, I guess, initially was a timely notification. I had a notice on my front door and I saw it as soon as I got home. And I know everyone's experience with the advisory was different, and that some people were seemingly notified in a timely manner, and some other people felt like it was a delayed response, and I know staff is going to address that. I just want to say we always try to do the best thing and the best thing for the citizens, and I know staff always tries to keep that in mind. So I know every action that they took was with that goal. So hopefully we can use this as an opportunity to improve our communications and hopefully use the red alert system a little bit better. I did receive the notification when the boil advisory was lifted from that. So I recognized that maybe it wasn't in place at the beginning, but that they really tried to make that work. So I appreciate that as a citizen as well as a council person. So I know we can only improve the communications from here. And then also we received as council a concern from a citizen about people who are not necessarily taking the PPE in public to the level that some other people are. And so I just wanted to address that and say thank you to everyone who is considerate and courteous of their neighbors and other citizens while they're out and about. I know some things are a necessity, and we still have to go out and grocery shop and do those sort of things. So just keep in mind your own protection and the protection of others while you're out. And I thank everyone who does that. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vittori?
Hello. I just would want to reach out to everyone who's out there trying to still either go to work every day or keep their businesses alive. I think it's been a very harrowing month or so, especially for small business owners who are filling out forms and looking forward to hopefully some supplementation from the government. And it's been frustrating. I don't know many if any small businesses in our area that got the PPP loan, and I'm obviously myself frustrated, but I just would want to encourage everyone to be optimistic. And we know that Middletown has always been all about our local businesses keeping us going, and I think we're resilient, and that this time will be really, I think, a new frontier, and that's been something that we've succeeded on in the past. So I just really wanted to give words of encouragement to people who might be feeling a little bit down and having to keep their jobs every day. So that's all I have. Thank you.
There we go. Am I back unmuted? Okay. Thank
You're good.
you, council members. Okay, well, for my council comments today, first of all, I really want to thank Mr. Mulligan. I thought he made some really good comments about the boil alert and everyone followed, so thank you. One more thing on that, I personally received 8 emails from citizens, and I appreciate our citizens reaching out. So email is a great way to reach your council members, and thank you, citizens who did that. All right, number 2 issue, ordinance enforcement. Now that the weather is nicer outside, I think it's a great time for us to focus on enforcing our ordinances. So I highly encourage you as citizens to submit ordinance violations via the website. I'm going to repost it on my mayor's Facebook page so everybody knows where they can go to do that. But, you know, even if you feel like in the past you haven't got response from the city or something like that, I've heard that often. I'm not downplaying that. I don't know, your experience in the past, but I highly recommend and will ask you to resubmit those again, because through these metrics is how we can actually then move forward and improve our systems and really keep our city beautiful and make it even better. So please do that. And I guess on a third note, I'll address COVID-19. So first of all, I want to assure everyone that roads and the improvement of roads has not been cut. And we definitely see that as council, I know, and as the city as a very important thing for the city to continue. So I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to keep us from keeping those roads moving forward. I do feel like we have slowed the spread of COVID-19, so I'm grateful for everyone for doing that. And that was the goal that the stay-at-home order was meant to achieve. Also, America was built, I would say, on risk mitigation through education, right? And so not risk aversion. So where we can go back to work safely with our newfound education and knowledge about COVID-19, I do feel like we need to do that. The alternative would be 18 months of this, which is clearly going to assuredly kill us in other ways. So this must be a personal choice, though, by individuals and by businesses. So moving forward, you're going to see a lot of suggestions. I would highly encourage businesses to think about your customers are going to come to you if they feel safe. So put measures in place that are going to bring customers, and we can keep that economy going and keep everyone safe at the same time. So this is how we do have to move forward. We can't let fear decide our fate. So I just encourage everybody to be responsible and smart. And Middletown is a city that keeps going in the face of adversity. That's how Middletown is still here today and thriving. So it's what brought me to even want to run for this position. I'm sure our council members as well. And in fact, that gives me a good transition to our city manager search. It is also what has drawn people to want to be a city manager in Middletown. It is the fact that Middletown just keeps going. So keep it up, and I'm proud of everybody. And that's what I have to say about that today. So that brings us to Susan, our city manager comments.
I will apologize ahead of time. You're probably going to be listening to me for a bit, so I apologize. I have 3 main things I'd like to discuss this evening. The first is the COVID-19 response. I understand this has just been a weird month or so, and people are getting through this the best they can, but I wanted to encourage any business owners that need assistance to reach out to the city. We're trying to help hook people up with resources as we're available. I've also been working with city staff on our budget projections to make sure we're able to quickly respond to revenue drops as they come. We are fully anticipating there will be revenue drops, but no one can quite give us an exact number. We will start to see decreases in April end of month. Typically with tax collections in April, we would see a large revenue collection. With moving that extension and the tax deadline to July 15th, we will not see the revenues in April that we would typically see. We are working with staff to look at what different budget numbers would be if we have to cut 10%, if we have to cut 14%, what that would look like for our staff and departments, and so we're able to readily respond when we need to. The de-appropriation bill you see tonight is the first of many efforts I'm sure you'll see to respond to these problems and to start making sure that we're in the sound financial footing moving forward and to keep the progress of Middletown moving forward. I appreciate the residents and the staff engaging in social distancing and keeping people healthy. We do not yet know when everything's going to be able to open back up again, but we are waiting on word from the governor's office about how we were going to proceed. And finally on that, I do want to thank our first responders who have been working in this arena with less resources and handling some difficult circumstances. Also, our health department workers who are working almost around the clock, getting the necessary information out to different sources and helping to collect the necessary supplies to keep us all safe. Those departments have just gone above and beyond to help us respond to this. On top of our COVID-19 response, there have been two major issues in the past couple weeks I'd like to address. The first is the Paperboard site. On April 16th, just after midnight, there was another fire at the site. Luckily, it was significantly less destructive than the previous fire. Thank God, again, no one was injured. This is disappointing because it is indicative that citizens are residing in the building still. We've previously discussed demolition and environmental remediation on that site. The very rough estimate of demolition is that it could cost upwards of $2 million. Since acquiring the building, we've been actively engaging and lobbying for state funding, first through their capital budget program and also through House Bill 252, which would allow for grant funds to demolish blighted commercial buildings. Obviously, with the COVID-19, the discussion on those matters has stalled to a near halt. 252 has been re-referred to committee and has been stagnant at that stage of the legislative process, although we continue to follow it with our representatives. We have not heard any movement on the capital budget. This leaves us with how do we address the situation? With regards to the demolition and cleaning of the site, I have had two companies approach me recently with, I'll just classify them as unusual offers. I'm waiting to commit for the companies to commit those offers to writing, and I will present them to council as we're able to do so. While we're waiting on those options and the funding to work out, we had discussed previously bids for fencing. Prior to COVID-19, we had finished a request for proposals for fencing. As COVID took over our general state of affairs, we received informal feedback from contractors that indicated they were concerned about participating in the bid that would require a walkthrough at the site. Our staff felt that a walkthrough was necessary at this site because it is so unique, it is so large. There are different points in the building where you could potentially tie in the building. You could have freestanding fencing. You could have fencing of different style, size, and height. And you wouldn't be able to determine that without actually going to the facility. But obviously the group setting caused some concern for our contractors. So we held out in the height of the COVID to try and be respectful of those concerns. Frankly, now that we've had another fire, I'm going to look at what we can do to move that forward here in the next week or two to get the contractors to the site safely to move forward with fencing quotes. I also want to point out that I share everyone's concerns about citizens residing in this facility. It's unsafe on many levels. In order to help address that, I've asked the Butler County Homeless Coalition and the Path Resource Team from Transitional Living in the county to do focused outreach on the Paperboard site in hopes that we can reach out to the people that were residing in that facility and assist them on obtaining resources necessary to get them into safer residences. It's not just the site, but we need to make sure that those citizens are in a safer environment. So we will move forward on that, but I wanted to give you an update. The last issue we have been alluding to is the water main break. Occurred over this past weekend. Before I get into a discussion of what happened, I want to be clear to all the citizens. We hear you. I truly appreciate everyone who's reached out to me and to other council members this week. Your involvement in the city and concern for the city is what makes us great. I understand your concern. We need to do better in communicating with what's going on, and we will do better. Like any situation that doesn't go well, I'd love to be able to go back and get it right, but unfortunately we can't do that right now. The only thing I can promise is that we have taken some time to figure out why what happened and how we can fix it. I've spent hours this week discussing with staff what happened, what the timeline was, and how we can improve, and putting together an action plan to do better. I want to take a little bit of a time to recap what happened so that the citizens understand what happened and where we're going to move from here. So if I may have a brief moment, 9:30 to 10 p.m. or so on this weekend, we started to receive calls of low water pressure and discolored water. Crews responded to the area of Manchester and Da Vinci, determined that there was a water main break in that area. The area is unique because the main that broke was on a transmission line between Kensington Pump Station and the Manchester Water Tower. This is not like your normal water main break where it would only affect a small number of people. The location and the function that site was serving caused a bigger problem than frankly we could remember ever having. As crews determined the break, they were required to excavate around the break to do the repair. they have to require the Ohio Utilities Protection Services, usually called OOPS, that they have a service that comes to the scene to mark the other utilities before any excavation can take place. Without making excuses, I do want to point out it was 2 hours before the crews showed up at the scene to mark those utilities and allow the excavation to begin. Crews worked from midnight to 2 in the morning to excavate the site. The repair on the actual part took 4 hours to complete. During the repair, the water needed to be drained from part of the system in order to make the repair. As the water drained from the system, more residents started to wake up. The plant started to receive additional complaints of the water and tried to determine the full scope of the concern. At this point, plant management was contacted, and eventually Public Utilities Director was notified between 7 and 9 in the morning. They in turn notified myself as the acting city manager and the communications manager. We were brought into the discussion. In this type of situation, there are very specific requirements for when and how to issue a boil advisory. Our staff work with the EPA to determine the area of the boil advisory and the language required. Although I understand it is not helpful in the notification, I want to make sure that everyone understands there was a small chance of contamination, and it turns out there was no contamination in the system. So at no point was anyone in actual harm's way, thankfully. We worked with the EPA to determine the actual language of the boil advisory and the area required. The final warning and its language and map were sent to the communications manager at noon on Saturday. That was immediately released to local media, including print and television. The message was then put on city social media and the city website. Crews hand-delivered notification to a few blocks that were whose home age and type indicated they may have lead exposure. They required a different notification than those of the general boil advisory, so those items were hand-delivered with the specific notification required. Crews also worked in the afternoon to take samples of the system necessary to test for those contaminants. Those samples require 24 hours to process. During the day on Sunday, we sent out additional notifications via the Code Red system. There was some delay interfacing with Code Red, and the Code Red system did not leave the voicemails with all the residents as they were supposed to do to add another level to this problem. We received results of the testing in giving us an all clear on Sunday around 4:30, indicated no contamination was in the system. We immediately sent out a Code Red via media release and released on all social media to end the advisory. With that rough outline, we have an idea of what happened, but I'm more interested in figuring out what bottlenecks we can control in the system and what needs to be fixed. In order to address the situation, I've tasked Public Works Department to work on new policies and procedures for when a supervisor must be notified about breaks. A normal main break would not be this wide in scope, so crews did not have a procedure in place to notify the supervisors immediately. Clearly, we need better procedures in place to determine when notification is required. Public Works will also be looking at additional training opportunities as necessary so that we can get those boil advisories drafted more efficiently. I've also asked Public Works to follow up with the Ohio Utilities Protection Services and the Ohio EPA to see if there are ways we could speed up those parts in the system. Ultimately, we don't control those entities, but I'd like to make the phone call to make sure that if there's a way to speed up those processes, that we do that. With regards to the notification, we have had the Code Red system in place for a number of years. With the turnover at the city building, there was not a sufficient policy and procedure in place for how to activate the system and when it should be utilized. I will work with the IT and appropriate staff to get that updated, get new training for all the staff that could use the system, and make sure that we have a better interface with the system to remove the bottleneck that Code Red caused. I'm also asking our Information Systems Department to determine if there is a better or different system for making auto calls or emails to citizens. Many people have asked why we did not utilize water billing to auto call people. The water billing system simply does not have that capability to auto dial residents in this manner. The system would provide a list of phone numbers, and it is frequently the number people provided when they registered for water. It's questionably accurate, and some of the numbers are for landlords and not for residents. I'd like to determine if there's a better way than Code Red to address that situation so that we can implement whatever the best practices are. I know there's also questions on social media about why there was not a television break-in for the boil advisory, or like sometimes we call it my house, the ticker at the bottom of the screen. This question's a little harder to answer. We provided the boil advisory to local stations. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to control what they put on the screen. The communications manager will be having a follow-up conversation with the media to see if we can address some of those concerns, but ultimately we have no ability to control what that break-in level is for the media. we did provide it to them. And I know the Journal posted it as well as some of the other sites posted it, just not as quickly as it would have gotten out to some of the residents. So hopefully those policies and procedures that we'll be putting into place and looking at new technology or different technology will help prevent this from happening in the future. I think post-mortem, the scope of the break is unusual. We were talking in staff meeting that the last time we remember a break, it was years ago and affected 2 blocks of people as opposed to the thousands that could have been affected by this matter. But we need to do better, and we will. I'm hoping by having this discussion now and working out the kinks with the notification systems that we'll be able to move forward from this stronger. And I thank the citizens and council for understanding how we got where we are and how we're going to do differently moving forward. So if anyone has any additional questions, I think you are now all unmuted.
Susan, how much of the Code Red issue was a lack of training, vice a problem with the Code Red system itself?
I think what I would have liked to have seen in an ideal world is that the Code Red system was utilized earlier. I think that part is a training issue. I think there was some concern that it caused extra confusion because some people got phone calls that weren't in the area, and then some people didn't get calls at all because it didn't leave a voicemail. And that part is a problem with the interface with Code Red. So it depends on what part of the system you're looking at. I think there's different responsibility for different parts of it.
I want to be careful we're not quick to blame the Code Red system, because it sounds like we really didn't know how to use it properly. So I don't want to make our citizens not have faith in signing up for that just because we had this problem. So I'm trying to.
I think we certainly need to have, I want to be honest, I think it certainly is a concern that we need to have better training on that, and we will. But I also think there is a part of this that we need to figure out, is there a better way to interact with Code Red? Or maybe there is a better system for us out there.
Susan, I'm curious, because I received all the notifications. I also got a text message. So not the phone call with the voicemail, which I also received, but I got a text message from a phone number that did not identify itself as Code Red. So I'm not sure if that's what it was, but it notified me that the boil advisory had been lifted. Was that Code Red?
I think it was probably Code Red. Those levels of text messages versus phone calls is what you sign up for, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It depends on how you sign up for it.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. I didn't know if that could somehow play into the phone numbers that we receive on the water billing system or not. Or
no, our water billing system does not have an automated messaging system like that. It would be convenient if it did, but it does not.
Is that because the system is outdated, or just because it doesn't have the capability?
I don't know if I can speak to that right now, but as we look at what we want to do moving forward, we will certainly take a look at that.
Is there, just one more thing, is there a way to, when we have people sign up for water and they give us all their information, to have, to give them an option to sign up for Code Red at that point? Maybe finding those touch points where we're contacting people who would need that relevant information, we can try to push the Code Red system at that point.
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, great.
I just have one more question, Susan. When did we provide the information to the TV stations?
It was right around noon on Saturday.
Okay. My request, I think, and probably what the citizens would like is, obviously, as soon as we are able to pass that, the better, but also an ability to advise people that, you know, even at 21:30 on Friday, that the city was looking into a water main break at a certain location. To me, and I think a lot of citizens, that would be the first, you know, piece of information, and all of these other pieces, the oops coming later, you know, the EPA with the actual verbiage, those are things that may delay the official boiler alert, but knowing that there is a possible water main break would definitely be the first thing that we would want to get out to our citizens moving forward. So.
I agree, and I hope by the portion I mentioned about asking Public Works to come up with new policies and procedures for notifying their supervisors, that would have happened significantly quicker, and that would solve, it would then give us the ability to act on that in the code red systems earlier. Okay, if there are no more questions, that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, let's move on to consent agenda. The matters under consent agenda will be considered routine and be enacted by one motion and one vote of consent. There'll be no separate discussion of these items. If a discussion is desired, then that item will be removed and considered separately. I just feel like I could actually read that every time so that people who may be listening to council for the first time understand what's going on. So that's what the consent agenda is. And Ms. Skank will be reading those for us.
Let's get Ms. Skank off of mute. How about now? Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that. So for this evening, you have to request the approval to purchase the following items totaling $38,951.55 off the ODA's contract for a new fire marshal truck and associated equipment. The 2020 GMC Sierra 3500 from Bob Ross Auto Group of Centerville, Ohio, in the amount of $37,832, and the graphics package for striping on the truck from Danco Lettering of Dayton in the amount of $1,119.55.
Mulligan moves to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Are you ready for the roll call?
You can go for it.
Okay.
Thank you. Susan, it may be better if you don't mute us because it's very hard on our end to unmute ourselves.
I'm not muting people. I don't know why this keeps popping up.
Okay.
I keep unmuting people.
Don't do that. Okay. All right. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll for us?
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Okay, motion agenda.
To approve the appointment of Evan Scrobot to the position of part-time line service lead in the Economic Development Department, Airport Division.
So move for adoption.
Moon, second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll for this? Unless anyone has any comments. Does anyone have any comments on this motion agenda item? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to legislation. I believe Mr. Yoder is with us today to present the legislation items.
I am. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great. All right. I'll go ahead and get started. So we've got 6 legislative items on the agenda tonight, the first 3 of which are second readings, and the last 3 of which are first readings, none of which are proposed as emergency measures. So I'll just go ahead and run through them. Starting with the first legislative item, that's ordinance number 2020-19, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to consent to the Ohio Department of Transportation Type A guardrail replacement. Again, this is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second, Vittori.
Any comments from council on this?
Nope.
I believe this is zero cost to Middletown. That's right, Susan?
That's correct. This is just allowing me to enter into the consent for them to do the replacement within the city limits.
That's right. Great. I like zero cost. All right, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll for us?
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Great. Next item on the agenda is resolution number R 2020-09, a resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Department of Transportation, United States of America, for a grant under the Federal Transit Administration Act of 1991, as amended. Again, this is a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments from council or Susan?
This is our yearly application for federal grants to operate Middletown Transit.
Great. Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Third item on the agenda is resolution number R 2020-10, a resolution authorizing the filing of applications for calendar year 2021 with the Ohio Department of Transportation for grants under the Ohio Public Transportation Grant Program. A second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Any comments?
This is the Ohio grant version.
Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Fourth item on the agenda is resolution number R 2020-11, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2020. This is the first reading. Next item, if there's no other questions on that, is ordinance number O 2020.
Do we have a report from staff on that? Did Susan want to make some comments?
I certainly can. This is what I've been discussing previously. In order to start to address some of the COVID budget cuts that we believe we're going to need, I asked Jake and the finance staff to look to see savings that we've already realized in the year and just deappropriate those monies so they would be available in reserve. The savings are largely from positions that have been held open longer. It is also when employees choose health insurance options that are less expensive than we had previously budgeted. And there was some movement around the communications firm that we had talked about implementing this year. And so now that we know those savings are realized, we're asking deappropriate them, and then they'll be available as we need funds in the COVID downswing. And apparently my dog would like to vote yes too.
Susan, how would these normally be addressed at the end of the year or be a surplus? Is that?
I'm sorry?
If we did not deappropriate these right now, how would this be addressed at the end of the year as a surplus budget?
If you did not deappropriate the money, they would stay appropriated to where they were previously issued. Some items could be spent. For example, there's a vacant field inspector position. If we were able to find somebody for that, we would be able to use those appropriated budget funds. Some of the things like health insurance would just be available at the end of the year as surplus.
Thank you.
All right, unless I hear any other questions, I'll go to the fifth item.
Thank you.
All right, hearing none, fifth item is ordinance number O 2020-20, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for a parcel located at the intersection of Lefferson Road and Spring Grove Lane from B1 Neighborhood Business District to I1 Industrial Park District. This is a first reading.
And by means of a report, this is what we had discussed during the public hearing. I think it was covered by the staff report and comments earlier.
Hearing no further questions, I'll move to our last sixth item on the legislative agenda. That's ordinance number O 2020-21, an ordinance amending the pay and benefits ordinances, ordinance number O 2019-83, and ordinance number O 2019-84. Again, first reading.
By means of a report, I've received a lot of comments and questions from council and citizens about the name of the job titles of employees out at the airport and whether they actually have supervisory details or lead details. So in order to address the confusion, we'd ask to amend the pay and benefits ordinance to create a classification of employee line service technician, which we believe is the fair and accurate representation for what we'd previously been calling line service leads. If you choose to approve this, you would later have a motion item to move the current employees from the line service lead position to the line service technician position. and the line service technician lead position would be removed. So this is really just a transparency matter to try and address what is actually going on in those job titles and make sure that we're fairly representing that. There was also a typographical error. I mean, this was just a transcription error when the ordinance was passed about the exempt employees for the technician and airport facility supervisor.
And this doesn't change job roles. This is merely a name title change.
That's correct.
Have these title changes been addressed with the employees who would be affected by the title changes? Has there been any feedback from them about this?
With the line service leads, yes, I believe they've all been made aware of that through Airport Manager Dickton. And I've discussed it extensively with him that we believe this is the most transparent way to move forward. And he's agreeing with the changes.
Okay.
All right.
All righty. There are no further questions. I think that takes care of the legislative items.
Okay, great. Well, with that being said, sorry, I'm looking at my calendar to figure out when our next meeting is. Well, we probably will have an executive session coming up here again at the end of this week. So that would be the next official meeting. But the regular city council meeting, the next one will be on May 5th at 17:30. And I'm not really sure how we're going to hold that next time, but we will hold it. And it might be here and it might be in council chambers, but we'll let you know. So with that, if there's nothing else, blue skies over Middletown, and I will see you guys all in various forms, virtually and at a distance.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.